Hey moms and dads, it's Dr. Scott back here with this next module here in Food is Medicine and Healthy You. So let's start diving into this. So we talked in the last video about what it means to go to the store and have our eyes on the things that we want to avoid, things that would add inflammation to our body. But now we're going to start diving heavy into foods that are anti-inflammatory. So when we know that we're going to the grocery store, now we're going to start talking about the foods that we want to put in our groceries, things that we want to make sure that we are consuming to try and make sure that we can enjoy our foods and make our health better. Couple of rules here that we're going to go through first. Number one, shop the perimeter. It's always best to stay around the perimeter of the store because the majority of the packaged and processed foods are in the center. This transition is going to take some work, but it does get significantly easier with time. I can tell you that I have been doing this type of nutrition style, eating an anti-inflammatory eating system for more than 10 years now. In the beginning, it took a little practice, a little figuring things out. We're gonna shortcut all that for you so that you can take everything that I have learned in my 10 plus years of doing this and condense it into a few days or weeks of training for you. Now, a little planning goes a long way. So if you are someone who is a planner for your meals, that makes life a lot easier because then you can simplify your ingredient list. Make sure that when you're going through the store, when you're in produce, focus on buying foods with lots of colors. There are all kinds of little phytonutrients and antioxidants that are present in the foods that you buy that have the most colors. Get a variety because each one serves a different purpose for your health. Always, always, always go to the store with a list. The one thing that you want to do is you want to prevent impulse shopping. Impulse shopping is your enemy. If you go to the store and you've got a list, and one of the programs that I absolutely love is a program called AnyList. It's a great program. It's an app that you can get either for free or a very small annual subscription fee, maybe like $3 or $5. Well worth it. The best part about it is you and your spouse, you can share the app so you can make modifications on the fly to your list, and you can both take advantage of knowing that the list has been changed because it'll happen in real time. Now, make sure that when you're going to the grocery store, you don't buy sweets and inflammatory snacks to keep in your house. You need to strictly limit your temptations. And this goes for your kids. You know, we so much want to improve our health to reduce the likelihood of chronic diseases, but also thinking that if our kids have temptations available, because they don't have impulse control for the most part, they're going to make those choices and go after the things that are the tasty snacks versus the healthy snacks. You want their taste buds to acquire a taste for the better quality foods. It's going to, in some cases, be a bit of a cold turkey process, right? Get the bad stuff out, get the good stuff in. They will eventually get to a point where they're going to say, I'm hungry enough that I'm going to make better choices because this is all that there is available. And so what you'll see is that your kids, when only given a certain set amount of choices, they will start to go after the foods that are the healthy foods because it's what's there. When, you know, I have lots of kids that I take care of, even here in my own practice, where they know no different. You know, we have one lady who, her mom is a nutritionist, and her kids have had nothing but fruits and vegetables, very little processed food their entire life. So in turn, their palate is drawn towards healthy foods. And then when they have foods that are sweet foods or, you know, foods that are healthy foods, they number one, they feel the difference. They don't feel as well. But two, they don't like it because it's too sweet. It just doesn't taste right. Another really important rule, never, ever, ever go to the grocery store hungry. You're literally setting yourself up for failure. You're going to make the food choices that are the ones that you know are the bad ones just because you're hungry because you want something quick to put into your stomach. You'll grab bags of chips. You'll grab things that we know are the snacky foods that we want to avoid. So make sure that you've always had something healthy to eat before you go to the grocery store. Now, we talked about getting lots of colors in your cart, and this is a really important thing. So there's a number of different things that you want to consider when you're buying your fruits and vegetables. We know that the most important thing is to get them as fresh as possible. Fresh always is our best. If you can't get good, fresh fruits and vegetables, frozen is your next best, with the caveat. Make sure that on the label that there are no added sugars, preservatives, or color enhancers. You will be surprised at the amount of fruits and vegetables that these are added to. Avoid canned fruits and vegetables as much as possible. They oftentimes will add salt, color enhancers, preservatives, you know, especially with canned fruits. Many of the canned fruits we will be packaged with corn syrup as the syrup that the foods will be in, especially things like peaches and those types of things. Almost always corn syrup. But even if it's juice, it's still sugar water for all intents and purposes. So when you go into the grocery store, when you go into the produce section, you're looking at your fruits. We've got a pretty good list here. This is obviously a short list of different things that you want to put into your diet on a regular basis, but look at how colorful this is, right? You've got berries, mixed berries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, tremendous choices. Always, always, always at the top of the list. Make sure that your refrigerator is always stocked with berries. They are tremendous foods loaded with tons of body protecting antioxidants. They are very low on the glycemic index, especially raspberries. They are the lowest of the low on the glycemic index. Very, very high in fiber, but an amazing taste, lots of antioxidants. So we want to also make sure that we have varieties, right? Have things like plums, have things like grapes, have things like apples and peaches and, kiwis. And I'm not sure if you know this, but, avocados and tomatoes, because they're seed bearing, they're also considered to be fruits. So when you look at this, right, a couple of big things you want to keep in mind. Have variety, but when you're going to have things like a banana, don't have the banana by itself. Have the banana in a fruit bowl with some berries, because bananas and grapes are both very high on the glycemic index. So when you combine them with the berries, it brings down the glycemic index, meaning the sugar yield. The more fiber that another food has, the lower it makes the glycemic index of the food that's higher, like the grapes or the bananas. So always make sure that if you're going to have those, don't have the high glycemic index bananas or the grapes by themselves. Always combine them with something else. With your vegetables, have a wide variety of vegetables. And remember that vegetables are something that they're your fillers. If you're really hungry and you want something to fill you up, have a great big vegetable loaded salad. Load these things up, chop up mixed vegetables and put on, mushrooms and put on different types of lettuce and put on, different peppers and put on cucumbers and just load them up. And the great part about this is that you can really eat large quantities of vegetables and have very, very little impact on your blood sugar, because these are super high in fiber, super low in carbohydrate yield, so they're a tremendous filler. Now, we're going to do things like your starches, like your potatoes. Your best choice is doing sweet potatoes and yams. They're starchy, they're fibrous and starchy, but more importantly, because they do have fiber, they have a low glycemic index. So if you've ever microwaved or cooked up a sweet potato, you notice that it's kind of fibrous, right? And so because of the fact that it does have that additional fiber and they are long chain starches, it's a slow digester. Big thing you want to keep in mind with those is portion size still does matter. You don't want to go and eat, a large sweet potato in a single sitting, because it's still going to be a high glycemic load, meaning you'll still yield a lot of carbohydrates from the meal. If you're going to do potatoes, it's better to go and do a red potato than a russet potato. Red potatoes, as I'm sure if you've ever eaten them, you notice they're a little bit heavier than an Idaho/russet potato. So the reason being is there is more fiber inside of a red potato. The other side is eat it with the skin on. If you make a baked potato, eat the skin with it. So the more fiber that you get from the potato, the lower the glycemic index. Number of big things that you see with these is that there's a wide variety of colors, with predominance being the greens. Greens are just tremendously healthy. Lots of little phytonutrients, but all of these things have antioxidants. All of these things have different compounds that help our bodies to be healthier when we consume them. So make sure that vegetables are the lion's share of your diet. Now, you also want to have lots of nuts and seeds in your diet. Let me give a caveat to that. So nuts and seeds, but nuts in particular, can be very high in fat content. So you want to regulate your portions, going with no more than about a half a cup at a serving, especially when you talk about almonds and walnuts and cashews and macadamias, because these things can really quickly add up in terms of caloric value. Now, pistachios, almonds, and walnuts are very high in omega-3 fatty acids, so these things are great. Now, we have macadamias in there. They're not a great omega-3 source, but what they are is they are a medium chain triglyceride source, so another type of healthy fat. You see on there that we also have hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, and chia seeds. All of these seeds are high in protein, high in fiber, very dense in omega-3 fatty acids, plus a lot of other nutrients. We're not going to dig into this in this particular episode, but I want you to understand that you want to have these things as staples in your diet on a daily basis, small quantities, right? So let's say, for example, if you want to have some oatmeal. Well, if you're going to have that oatmeal, add in flax meal, add in chia seeds, add in hemp seeds, things like that, because what they'll do is they'll bring back into balance the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, because oatmeal tends to be very high in omega-6s, but these others are dominant to omega-3. So if you add in a couple of tablespoons to your oatmeal of chia seeds or hemp seeds, then you're quickly back into balance. So it tends to help you to balance out that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio very quickly. And because they're so dense in fiber, they also lower the glycemic index further of the oatmeal. So it's a great choice. Now, when you look at grain choices too, right? So obviously everybody loves the flavor of their grains. Everybody loves breads and pastas. Here are some choices that you can utilize to fulfill those cravings. If you want to use bread, like we've talked about, Ezekiel bread is a good wheat bread choice. It is a sprouted grain, so it is a live grain. So if you're going to do a wheat bread, that's the best. But you know what? There's lots of great gluten-free breads on the shelves, sometimes in the frozen department, sometimes on the shelves. They taste really good, which is nice because they didn't always used to be that way, but now they are very good. But if you want to have a wheat product, the Ezekiel is the best choice. On the right side here, that is a quinoa meal. Now, quinoa is technically considered to be a grain, but it's one of the better grains because it's easy to balance the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of this grain. There's only 10 omega-6s to 1 omega-3. The ideal ratio is 4 omega-6s to every 1 omega-3. So all you really need to do is add in a little bit of omegas per cup, so like a tablespoonful, and you're essentially back into balance, which is great. It's also very high in protein and very low in the glycemic index. Now, when you look at flax meal is versatile. One of the things that I try and teach a lot of our patients, people about when it comes to using flax, it's an amazing replacement for breadcrumbs. You can use organic whole ground flaxseed meal to use as a breading for if you want to go and make breaded meat products, chicken, pork chops, things like that. Great replacement. If you want to use it as a replacement for things like your breadcrumbs when you make meatloaf, if you make meatloaves, if you make hamburgers. So interestingly enough, we have an Italian family. My wife's entire side of the family is either Polish or Italian. And so my wife's very Italian mother, when she first started tasting foods where we had replaced the breadcrumbs with the flax meal, she was amazed because she liked it better than she did the taste of the breadcrumbs. So if my Italian mother-in-law chooses this, I bet you it'll be good enough for you. Now for pastas, my favorite replacements are using red lentil pasta, green lentil pasta, and Banza chickpea pasta. They are great replacements. They have a texture very similar to your pastas that you're used to, your wheat pastas. Flavors very similar. Yes, you will notice a small difference because the texture is a little bit different, but it won't take long before you tend to like this quite a bit. And the great part about it is no guilt, low glycemic index, no wheat, safe for just about everybody. So you can eat this without having guilt. And the portion size is still, you want to control your portions because there still are carbohydrates. So you don't want to overeat on any kind of a pasta. But if you're going to have a pasta, because this is lower on the glycemic index, higher in protein, then the great part about it is that you're going to be able to eat this on a regular basis without this sending your blood sugar through the roof and you having lots of spillover leading to fat storage. Now, down on the bottom right side, you see a bag of rice pasta. For those of you who have a hard time acquiring a taste for the Banza pastas or the lentil pastas, you can use rice pasta. The one caution I will tell you is it is higher on the glycemic index by the Banza and the lentil by quite a bit because it is rice. It breaks down very quickly, turns into a rapidly absorbing carbohydrate because there's no fiber. So it tastes great, but it's very starchy and it will spike your blood sugar. So if you're going to have it, make sure you're combining it with vegetables. Vegetables will bring down the glycemic index quite a bit, making the food easier for your body to process without big swings in blood sugar. Now, when we talk about meat and poultry, so we know that meat can be generally very inflammatory if you get the the industrial made products. So what we want to look for in any kind of a meat product is we want to look for the organic organic non-GMO project labeling, so that you can get the benefits of knowing how these animals were raised. You see on here a wide range: bacon, Canadian bacon, Italian sausage, ground turkey, ground beef, hot dogs, chicken, eggs. All of these bear the organic label, okay? And almost all of them bear the non-GMO project, which means that what they were fed was non-GMO based, which is huge, because we do not want those frankenfoods being put into things that we are going to consume. And organic also means, as we talked about before, we know how it was raised, we know the living conditions, we know what crops it was fed as it was being grown. So this is a really important thing for us to look at to make sure that we see this. Again, we talked about before with the eggs, we also want to look for that free range labeling. But if you're going to eat meats, right, and again, there's no clear literature on one side or the other. Some people say meat bad, some people say meat's good. Let's just say that we're not going to make any major changes to habits. If you make a choice to become a vegetarian, good for you. If you choose not to become a vegetarian, good for you. When we look at the literature, there are a lot of people on both sides of the fence. If you're going to put meat into your body, these are the kind of choices that you want to make, so that you at least know that what you are putting in is not going to drive inflammation in your body, because the way the animal was raised, because of what was put into it, because the environment that it was surrounded by was one that promoted healthy fats, did not promote a lot of stress, did not put a lot of antibiotics, pesticides, chemicals into the animal. And so in turn, because you are what you eat, you will do better, because the food quality is going to be better that you're taking in. Now, for those of you that are looking for protein alternatives, maybe considering moving away into a vegetarian diet, one thing you want to keep in mind is the best source of protein if you are becoming a vegetarian is going to be your beans, especially things like lentils. Lentils have all of the essential and non-essential amino acids, so that can essentially replace your meat. But sometimes people get bored, need taste variety. So you can do mixes of beans. You can do things like that. You can mix it in with things like quinoa, which also has a broad spectrum, good profile of amino acids. But you can also do it from getting a lot of your standard vegetables. Vegetables are very dense in protein in general. So, eating adequate amounts of broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and your spinaches, all of these things contain aminos. So it's very rarely are they complete aminos by themselves, but it's combining these things together. That's why, because we're so concerned with making sure that we get complete proteins, if you're going to be a vegetarian, try to make sure you're eating some green lentils with your meals on a regular basis. Now, when we talk about dairy, right, because dairy is something where there's conjecture on both sides, if we're going to take in dairy, we want dairy to be organic. And we talked about this in past videos. We want to keep out all of the nasty things that are put into the cows in the industrial agricultural system, where they're close quarters, stressed on antibiotics, unnatural feed. When you look at things like these Organic Valley and the Stony Fields and Horizon, so they are all organically raised, meaning that we know what's put into them. So we know that the product that they're going to put out in terms of the cheese, the dairy products, they're going to have omega-3s in them. They're going to be better quality. They're not going to have antibiotics. The animals were raised in different conditions. So we're not going to have tremendous amounts of stress hormones sitting in there. They're not going to be exposed to all kinds of antibiotics. And they're not going to have long histories of infections, because the majority of these animals, when they're raised in these environments, also are in a more of a free range, more natural environment than what they would have been in the larger industrial farms. Now, for those of you that are looking for dairy alternatives, there are some great dairy alternatives. And I personally no longer drink milk. And for those of you who are wondering why, one of the big reasons why that we talk about this is that, you can think of milk as baby cow growth juice. Okay. It has growth factors that are literally specifically given to the baby cow to turn it into an adult cow. So you've got colostrum and other hormones that help that baby cow to finish its development, to drive it forward and faster. So it's things that can mess with our own endocrine system. So as we get older, we really should not be drinking milk products. Even our own body's production of hormones like lactose shuts down when we get into our toddler years, because we're not supposed to continuously be drinking milk products when we wean from mom. That's why you see so many people that have issues with lactose intolerance, or when they have dairy products, that they'll tend to get some GI upset because they're not producing enough lactase, the enzyme that digests lactose, so they have some GI irritation. So there's a lot of good alternatives. Coconut milk, almond milk, tremendous. There's also a lot of yogurts out there that are non-dairy, things like coconut. There are also almond milk made yogurts. So there's a great variety of things like that on the market now. So if you do want to have some of these products, but you don't want to have the dairy, a lot of good alternatives. They taste excellent. I know myself, I like these all quite a bit. Now, when we talk about condiments, so condiments is where we start having to look at being really label conscious. So when you look at things like, having ketchups and mustards, some of the most common things that you're going to find, very, very rarely do you find that they are good on the label. Most of them have high fructose corn syrup, have lots of extraneous ingredients, ketchup being the bigger culprit than mustard. So this is so where I live, there are giant eagle grocery stores, and a lot of grocery stores are starting to do this. Even if you go to places like Costco, you're seeing that ketchup is something now that is starting to become organically made and lower in sugar. And so we look for lower label ingredients, right? This one here from Giant Eagle, organic tomato concentrate, organic sugar, organic vinegar, salt, organic onion powder, organic spices. So everything in there is organic, so you have some controls over what you're putting into your body. But the other side of it is that no corn syrup. Now, do we want the sugar? No. But the lower the sugar can be on the list, the better. But there are alternatives getting on the market. You have to be cautious that if you see something that says low sugar, that naturally tends to have high sugar, you have to watch for artificial sweeteners because you want to avoid those as well. When you look at mustard, it's pretty simple, right? It tends to be mustard seed, and the list of things that you see on here, pretty typical. They very rarely add any type of a sweetener into a mustard. So it's pretty basic for the most part to get a good flavored product. The primary thing that adds the flavoring to mustard is the vinegar and the spices. Now, when you look at mayonnaise, if you go with the off-the-shelf stuff, very, very rarely is it healthy. You're finding that a lot of companies like Sir Kensington's and some of these other ones are finally digging into finding ways to make mayonnaise a product that you can eat and not have to worry about consuming it. If you look at their list, right, avocado oil, certified humane free-range egg yolks, water, distilled vinegar, salt, lime juice, all things that are really simple ingredients. The same thing when you get into the Annie's barbecue sauce, right? So not a lot of sugar, right? A little bit lower down the list, still high. So we don't want it to be a staple and you want to eat large quantities of it, but you don't see the high fructose corn syrup. Now, when you look at this, a couple things to interpret. You see water, apple cider vinegar, tomato paste, molasses. Molasses is a sweetener. Cane sugar is a sweetener. So when you go a little further down, you see cornstarch. Cornstarch is a powdered form of corn, but it's a starch versus the high fructose. So it's a little bit different. It's a longer chain. But it's still something that adds additional sugar into the total equation. So the total carbohydrates are going to be influenced by all of those. So when you look at labels, just realize it's hard with a lot of these condiments to get things that are low on the glycemic index, low in sugar, but look for sugar to be as low down on the label as is humanly possible. Now, when you get into salad dressings, here's where it gets complicated because salad dressings are notoriously unhealthy. But a lot of competitors are starting to get into the market to try and change that because, let's face it, I like dressing, right? Part of the reason I eat salad is because I like a good dressing on my salad. So when you look at some of the things that are on the market right now, so Bragg is one that most people know about. Very simple ingredient list. Raw apple cider vinegar, olive oil, honey, garlic, liquid aminos, and spices. The sweetener that they use is honey. Much better choice. And we know that when they use honey, they also use organic honey. So it's going to be a better quality. When you look at Primal Kitchen down beneath, right? So lots of spices, right? Lots of things in it. But you don't see a lot of inflammatory ingredients. So things like Primal Kitchen, they really go the extra mile to make sure that when you're going to get a dressing, it is going to be something where the majority of the flavor comes from seasoning and not from extraneous additives, which is a great thing to see. I brought a couple of theirs in, not because I necessarily advocate for Primal Kitchen, because it's just a great example. As I mentioned in the last video, a lot of these companies that are jumping into this condiment market, they know that the only way that they're going to win customers away from the craft brands is they have to have an exceptional tasting product. And so when you see this, know that these products are really going to the next level in terms of flavor because they want you to be a return customer so that you can enjoy the benefits of these healthy products and not make it hard for you to leave your old product. Will you pay a little bit more? Yes, you will. But, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You spend a little bit more money now to put good things into your body than it saves you on what you'll spend later on in life trying to deal with diseases. Now, another great condiment are things like salsa. Salsa is something that is oftentimes unutilized in our diets, right? It's a great condiment. It's something that is versatile, but the great part about it is there's a lot of organic salsas, and even in the ones that they're not the organic salsas, they very rarely have a lot of extraneous additives. If you look at even just the Newman's and the Costco organic salsa, the labels are short, and what you see on them is it's pretty basic. So tomatoes, onions, apple cider vinegar, poblano peppers, not complicated. They taste really good, and very, very little that you have to worry about in these. With the Costco one, there is organic sugar, but the one good thing is at least it's down in the bottom half of the list. So instead of being high, which means that the quantity that's in there is going to be relatively low. When you talk about dips and sides, so there's a lot of great dips and sides that have really hit the market. One of the ones that I happen to like quite a bit is avocado mash. If you've never tried it, they carry it in a lot of different places. Costco tends to carry it in bulk, so it's a really good price. It is a tasty little avocado alternative. So if you don't feel like peeling an avocado, or you don't necessarily want to have guacamole, but you want something that has avocado, great taste, real simple seasoning. It's just avocado, salt, pepper, and a little bit of lemon juice. Tastes tremendous, goes with a lot of different foods. Guacamole is another great one, right? You can put it on salad, you can put it with food, you can dip in it. Great choice, loaded with omega-3s, loaded with antioxidants. Really, really good choice if you want something to go with your foods. Things like hummus. Hummus is also another great one. Big thing with hummus that you have to watch for is that a lot of the larger brands, they will use inflammatory oils and a lot of things that are additives that are not good. So, but Kirkland's organic hummus, great stuff, right? So organic chickpeas, water, organic seasoned sesame tahini, organic sunflower oil. Now we talked about that one. So sunflower oil is an omega-6 source. So you want to realize that when you eat something like this, it is a good idea to try and have an omega-3 source in your meal to counterbalance it, okay? When you look at the one above, when you look at cedars, it's steamed chickpeas, organic sesame tahini, organic sunflower oil, but then down beneath it, virgin olive oil. So that one is technically going to be pretty well balanced. So that tells you some of the things that we look for, right? If we see sunflower oil, then we want to see something like an olive oil or an avocado oil to counterbalance it. Now, when you looked at canned and frozen foods, you have to watch carefully for salts, sugars, and preservatives. It's really difficult when you talk about canned and frozen foods to get things where you're not going to have these. So if you are going to have canned or frozen foods, a couple of big things you got to think about. If it has to be out of a can, rinse it. Get as much of the junk off of it as you can. Rinsing will at least dilute some of the salt, but because it soaks in the salt, the cells of whatever the fruit or vegetable is, it tends to soak that stuff in. So if you're going to do it, your best bet is to soak it in pure water to allow the salt to drain out of it, and then rinse it again. Sugar, you'll find that a lot of your canned and frozen foods, especially frozen, they tend to add a lot of sugar to frozen foods and a lot of preservatives to frozen foods. And it's well known that salt is a huge component to most frozen foods, especially your frozen meals. So try to limit those pretty strictly in your diets, guys, because if you have the other things on the list, you'll always be full, you'll always be satiated. But the big thing is that you'll always be eating foods that promote improvements in your health. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this gives you a good framework, good foundation from some of my experience and some of my research that I have done over the years, helping myself, my family, and others to learn how to eat an anti-inflammatory style. So as you go through, if you have questions, drop it in the comments below. And what we'll do is we'll just start breaking this down, because if you have that question, you ask it, more than likely somebody else had the exact same question. So we can break this down together to make sure that everyone is learning, growing, and increasing their ability to go to the store with confidence, so that you can improve your health every time that you go in there, and you can make sure that your food choices are the best food choices for you. I look forward to seeing you in the next module. Have a great day, guys.